All right, y'all, take two. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to MACMH's Community Podcast Series. We're here to inform, inspire, and support. I am the host, Twana Anderson, the Community Engagement Director, and I want to thank you for taking the time out today to tune in. Here, we invite our partners to join us for a conversation about their organization's service to the community, any challenges they may be facing, and future plans, all the while weaving throughout ideas to help you have an impact on a child's mental health journey. As usual, we are streaming this episode live, but it will be available anytime you feel like learning about children's mental health and the community that serves them. If you enjoy this video, please help spread the word. This is our second podcast series and the very final episode of the series. And we've just had a really good time. Also, during this episode, we'll make reference to books, articles, and other information that will support the knowledge that you will gain during our time together today. You will find those links in the description, along with contact information for our guests, so that you can stay connected. And just keep in mind that because this has been a series, there's been different information that I've shared in the description. So if there's something that you're looking for, go back to a previous episode. There are lots of links, lots of information in the description throughout the series or throughout the episodes in this series. I want to encourage the audience to ask questions in our chat. No one's really done that yet. So if we could get that done today, that would be amazing. We want to take questions from you if you're here and you're listening and joining us live. The Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health has a mission to promote and pursue optimal mental health from infancy to young adulthood. Every topic of this podcast is approached with an open and critical mind, exploring opportunities to view circumstances through a different lens. Being in this space means we advocate for all children to have equal access and opportunities to develop the skills to nourish their lives. We begin to help others remove their blinders, while we're also being challenged to remove our own. We need to see other people, appreciate their perspectives, and perhaps even learn from their journeys. So I've had an amazing time talking with our guest panel throughout this month, commemorating BIPOC Mental Health Month. They have over 80 years of combined experience, and I respect their contribution to the conversation. In our first episode, we were able to meet them all, get to know them, and learn about their knowledge and their experience. We took a deep dive into trauma in the second episode. We talked about historical, generational trauma that contributes to the current collective state of Black mental health. We talked about the experiences that children have that also create drama in their lives on top of the generational trauma that we all have in our DNA. Then in our third episode, we talked about solutions, because we're not just talking about the problems here. The conversations that we have need to move towards action and talking about the solutions. So how do we collectively begin to heal and what that looks like for our Black boys? That was episode 3. Now, in today's episode, we'll share resources that are available to you and your families, because we're out here. We are out here doing our best to serve our community. So our special guest today, we have Leo Howard, Bobby Arnold, and joining us for the beginning of this episode is Jamil Stamshore Lott. So let me bring them all on. Hey, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
I appreciate you joining me. Man, we've had quite the journey, right, Leo and Bobby? You've been here every week of our series, so thank you so much. I want to just take a minute. I'm not going to read your bios today. I want you to introduce yourselves to the audience, and then we're going to dig into the organizations and the services that you specifically provide before we get into bringing in all the other resources that are out there. So Jamil, since you're new to the group today, how about we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We can start with me. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation to be present. My name is Jamil Stamshore Lott. I'm the CEO of an organization called Creative Kaponya. The Kaponya is Swahili for healing. And so really my wife and I put this together about 7 years ago, a mental health practice to ensure that folks who have been pushed into the margins, right, because you practice a different sort of religion, English is not your first language, your body type is not what's in, like all these different ways of pushing people to the outskirts cause a unique form of harm. And in our traditional mental health system, we're not honoring those dimensions. And then we see a level of greater harm occurring. For one, folks aren't even going to utilize mental health services because I can't find that appropriate connection. And then two, if they do, if they're courageous enough to enter into that space, then being invalidated in various different ways, like I said, being misdiagnosed can cause a greater level of collateral damage. And so our objective is to do away with all that harm, get rid of all the barriers, finance, lack of representation, and so on. So that's a little bit about myself and my organization.
Well, would you mind just taking us a little bit backwards and share with us, number one, how you came up with the name and how you and your wife decided to even get into this field? Give us a little background.
Yeah, for sure. My wife and I have always been in like the human service sector, if you will, in some various different forms. The later part of our career, we became mental health therapists, getting our licensure in this space. And really, for me, everything that I do professionally is rooted in the personal. And so understanding what it's like to walk a life of, I really want to be connected to folks. I really want to be, celebrated, uplifted, and finding myself like, why am I being mistreated? What did I do wrong? Like constantly confused, dealing with microaggressions and the mental gymnastics of all of that, and existing in institutions and organizations where you see yourself and those that you serve, and you want to do right by them, and knowing that your organization and your environment around them is not really producing that type of fruit. They're not able to accommodate for various different reasons groups that have just been going through it and need a helping hand, need an empathetic sort of response. And so just really just being in these spaces, raising your hand at the table, saying like, hey, we need to think about this, consider this, switch that, and just really being invalidated. And just, working day and night on your own personal time to make a difference for the whole community. Just realizing like, you know what, it's time for us to take our resources and take our shot at making some level of change that we continue to run into this wall, this blockage, and let's see if we can do it ourselves.
That's awesome. And so you're located in South Minneapolis?
Yeah, we're in South Minneapolis, and we partner with a number of organizations throughout the Twin Cities and at large to bring about the psychoeducation, therapeutic services, and so on.
So I'm on your website right now. So as you've been talking, I just want to make sure that people can see the kind of information that they can find out about what you all are doing. Amazing. I only hear amazing things about you and what you're doing there. And we got a chance to meet last fall when you came and hosted an event that MACMH was a part of. And I really enjoyed meeting you then. And then I met your wife and didn't even realize as I was in her session that she was your wife until she mentioned, oh my goodness, this is that's what I had reached out to. It was like, I'm in your wife's session.
That's right.
Pretty amazing. So can you talk a little bit more specifically about the services that you have? Right here, I see therapy, education and training, community healing sessions. And then, of course, you are doing an amazing job doing keynote speaking. So maybe just talk a little bit about the services that you do and how, if I'm just sitting listening to this conversation right now, what would your recommendation be for me to reach out to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so to answer the last question, number one, go to the website just like you see here. Select the service you're interested in. I want to meet one-on-one for therapy, talk about some things I'm going through with somebody. You can just select that option and then type your name in and submit your request, and we'll get back to you in about 48 hours. In addition to that, the services that we offer are the individual group therapy. We also offer social emotional learning groups, in the education spaces and various spaces. Doing the training and education for organizations, understanding how to implement policies and practices with mental health embedded in them. And also, what's called transformative healing sessions. So borrowing from restorative practices, the clinical space, and our embodied practices, incorporating that into one brings about this unique experience of how to really process one's pain so we're not passing it, to understand, have a better relationship with ourselves so that we know it's occurring. And that's where that psychoeducation is critical. Just in all these services, you're learning, you're getting the tools to understand myself, like know thyself, so that I'm not decentered and going into various different spaces. And our work is really just about just liberating folks from all these ills that just are internal, external, and so on and so forth. And so that's really our objective.
Yeah, we had a really great conversation about historical trauma and generational trauma. And that's really kind of, the foundation of this conversation is that's very specific to our communities, to Black communities. And can you just speak, and I know, you work with a lot of people in the community, but can you speak with how the services you provide, the therapy that you provide, do you address that historical trauma on a regular basis with the people that you see, or is that something that's maybe you identify, but it's not something that you specifically kind of pull out of your toolbox, I guess is the best way to say it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one, I would say one facet of this, they're client centered. So if a client is coming in and wants to explore those elements, we have that, right? If they're like, hey, I'm just focusing on the marital stuff, right? Like that's just like I don't think we think that applies, right? We can focus on that. So we're client centered. But I will say what you're referencing is at the center of our work, understanding that there's a large population of folks who have been marginalized, pushed to the fringes of society, right? And then in that process, there are these symptoms that come about from your environment. When you feel like you've been neglected, you feel like you've been invalidated, you're not valued, you're going to respond in certain ways that are really protective. And in that response, oftentimes that's used as evidence as to why we continue to oppress groups. See, we can't give these kids any more resources because see what they do, right? But the conditions were already set in a way that wasn't going to yield great results.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a pause.
Well, thank you. Again, I just appreciate you being able to come and share with the audience a wonderful resource that they probably didn't know was there. And I know that you do great work. I hear about the group sessions a lot. And so I think that it's probably, are people really excited about group therapy? Do you feel like people are a little bit hesitant to be vulnerable in a group of people that maybe they don't know? Is it the same group all the time so they do get a chance to get comfortable? Can you just talk a little bit about the group therapy sessions that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's group therapy and then there's group work, right? And so therapy might be a family, and therapy might be like a specific group of folks.
Okay.
And I think more specifically, the group work I think is really impactful. Some of that is the keynote, some of that is training and education, some of that transformative healing sessions. That's really impactful because again, we're spreading like the wisdom of psychoeducation, right? And tapping into the brilliance, beauty, and sophistication that folks are already bringing to the table. Like for you to make it this far in life, wherever you are, you've been doing something good. And so we want to honor that as well in this process. And when we get into those spaces where folks don't feel like it's all about me, you're not analyzing my stuff, that's when we see a lot more folks come to the table. So you might just be at work and you have this presentation transpiring at work about your defensive mechanisms or communication navigation. And then you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know what? I'm intrigued. I'm going to inquire a little bit more and engage in this because I think this might apply to me. Sometimes, traditionally, historically, our mental health system is not honoring the experience and can't speak the language, right? And so when you can find someone that's speaking your language, then all of a sudden it piques your interest more so than otherwise. And so I think that's what the experience has been for us, is that we're tapping into a sector of the population that usually gets dismissed. And when you tap in with the right language, right, then you see transformative things unfolding.
I have one more question for you, Jamil, because as we think about therapy and really doing the work on ourselves to make ourselves better and then make our families better, and then that goes out to our communities. One of the things I'm learning about mental health, the difference
Mhm.
between mental health and mental wellness, is simply how you can build people. So let's talk about billing, because I
Yeah.
think people are probably listening and want to know, all right, I love the idea of doing this. Is insurance billed? Like, how do people pay for the services that they get from you?
Yeah. So one, we do not take insurance. That's part of our model. It's built in. Is insurance forces us as therapists to diagnose you. Even if you're like coming to the to the table and you don't meet criteria really for anything, oftentimes there's like a force of something we have to give you so I can get paid and you can get these services. We don't think that's right. We think that's unethical. And so we don't even engage in that. It's like if you need it or want it, we can do that as licensed mental health professionals. However, to avoid that potential harm, because it's not a blood test that I take to like really determine if you have depression. Right? It's based on my own like lens. And so yeah, we don't take insurance, but we do raise funds to offset the cost for folks or eliminate the cost for folks. We acquire grants. There's private donors. We sell our own merch, and all the profits and proceeds go to that cause.
That's
And so
awesome.
there's a number of different avenues in the creativity of Creative Component to find opportunity to connect with other agencies, and that's sort of like partnering with Leo 80 by 3 United Way, right? We found like a collaborative way that's creative, that a number of folks are tapping into these services that never had access before, and the results are powerful.
Well, what a great segue into, into getting Leo involved in this conversation. So, Leo, tell us just a little bit about yourself, 80 by 3, resilient from the start, and talk a little bit about this collaboration and partnership that you have with Creative Component.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thank you again for having me. It's been amazing being here these past few weeks. And I'm Leo Howard. So, I am the program manager for 80 by 3 Resilient from the Start. And what that is an early childhood education and care initiative that was launched by the United Way in 2022. And the hope is to address and minimize the impact of childhood trauma, and then also make sure that all of our earliest learners have access to trauma sensitive care and education. And so a little bit about the partnership with Creative Component, that itself, you'll hear me say this a lot, but that has been a blessing. I don't want to say was, we're still in partnership with them, and anytime we can see them, whether it's in community, whether it's a lunch and learn or whatever, it's always a pleasure and a blessing. But that started with us trying to answer the question of who's supporting the supporters, who's helping those that are helping our community, like the pillars of our community that are making the real transformative change. Often they're doing this heavy lift alone. And a lot of what we've experienced is doing the heavy lift alone without necessarily having the resources that they're providing to the kids that they're working with right now. And so for me, that's amazing. Like you'll hear me often say, like, I'm your biggest cheerleader. And I want to be clear and like put out there. And one of the things that we're trying to focus on at the United Way and 80 by 3 itself is decentering ourselves. And so the organizations that we've been partnering with, Mary T. Welcome, Northside Childhood Development, Centro, Wilder, we're going to get into all of them today. So I'm just naming
Yes.
them, but they are the ones who have been doing this work and continue to. And so we don't want to come in and say, look at us, we're 80 by 3 and we're changing the scope. No, these organizations are doing that. And we're blessed and fortunate enough to be able to go on that walk with them and support them in any way that we can. And so a lot of the work has also been figuring out what that help looks like. What does that support look like? How can we actually support you? And getting that feedback from the experts, from the people doing the actual work. And so going through the website right now, what you'll see is a lot of the resources that we put together. And once you get to the exhaustive list of resources, it's long. There's a lot. And that's intentional. That's intentional. What we're hoping is that people who go to the website, and it's for everybody. It's obviously for caregivers, for guardians, parents, but we also did it in mind with those people who are stewards of the resources, who are doing the work and who are connecting resources to families. And in our idea, in a perfect world, they are looking at these resources, familiarizing themselves with what's there. And then when a family comes to them and says, hey, we have this need, it's like, oh, boom, I know where you can find something like this on the 80 by 3 website. Personal experience, lived experience, and professional experience, I've learned that the worst time to look for resources is when you actually need them. And so, yeah, like that's a big part of the website, keeping people in the know about what we're doing, but then also making sure that the word is being spread about what not just we're doing as an initiative, but what these organizations are doing. We've and just things that we're partnering on, and things that are in the news, like the early learning priority scholarships, the changes to that, and just a lot of different things that are going on in the ECE world. We want to make sure that the resources don't stop with just being on this website. We want them to get out there. We want people to be able to make use of them. And we want it to, the resources are only as good as the people that you're serving. And so we want to make sure that we get those to people who need them. Yeah, that's a little bit about the 80 by 3 initiative. And we've been fortunate enough, like I said, to partner with Creative Caponia to do. And I personally got to sit in a transformative healing session last week. And it was amazing. It was amazing. And some of the things, and I'm a, praise Creative Caponia a little bit right here, because I cannot say enough good things about the work that they've done. But one of the huge things that I am proud of is that together we have worked to normalize wellness and make sure that organizations know that taking care of your mental health is not reserved for the rich, white, and wealthy, that we deserve that as well. And so I'll share a quick story, and just how this kind of showed itself to me. And I was just like, okay, I had to take a step back and really smell the flowers and really take it in. So one of the last times that we all got together in terms of the provider cohort, that's all the early childhood organizations. We got a few of them together. Everybody couldn't make it, but we got a good amount of them together to celebrate our walk at the Minnesota Children's Museum, and just really get to a space where not just the organizations, but families came too. So I had a lot of directors coming up to me telling me, one, we had never been in this space, or we haven't been in this space in years, and it was really good to get back. But then you had family members who were coming up to me saying, we really needed this. Like, this was an opportunity for us to spend time together, build community with other organizations, but just have fun. And the thing that really kind of set it off for me, that like had me walking on clouds when I left. Jamil's wife Sarah came in, and she just celebrating and like saying hi to everybody. And I heard a parent out loud say, "That's my therapist. You should go and talk to her about X, Y, and Z." And on its surface, that may seem like, oh, that's not a big deal. Like, okay, she just saw her therapist in public and acknowledged that. But it's a big deal, because you have to know where this initiative started, where this partnership started. When we got to a space of even floating the idea out there, we had to be really intentional and really conscious of the language we were using, because there is a healthy distrust of systems. And at times, the word therapy, mental health, wellness can create and evoke emotions where people are like, nah, I'm not messing with that. And so to get to a space where that was a real hurdle, where we had to figure out exactly how we wanted to say it, present it, to go from there, where we were hesitant about even saying the word therapy, to now people within the organization and family members. These aren't just staff. These are family members from the community saying, that's my therapist right there. Like, for me, I was just like, you know what? Like, how can this Friday get any better? And then I, had to stop by Candyland afterwards and everything. And so it was just even better. I had my Swedish fish, I had some popcorn, and then I just was filled up. And so that is just like a little small example of the work that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of with Creative Caponia and with organizations like A Baby Space, who are really becoming the champions of that change themselves.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This is why we're here, right? Learning more about the options that are in our community that's going to help us grow as adults and then give us the tools that we need to help our babies develop a solid emotional intelligence. But knowing and understanding is the first step, right, Jamil? I know that you need to leave, I wanted to just, if you have a couple more minutes, to just ask Bobby if you have any questions or comments for Jamil before he hops off, because Bobby has been an amazing guest on here, and he has so many ideas and thoughts that me as an adult, as a generation, I think I'm Gen X, I don't even know, but so before we let you go, Jamil, Bobby, is there anything that you want to say or ask Jamil before he gets out of here?
I don't necessarily know, but like asking, just I'm probably definitely gonna check out the website. You should like just something like that, because I definitely like the idea of like what you do, and just it is inspiring. So I don't know if I really have nothing to add, anything to ask, but I'm definitely gonna have to give the website a look.
All right, awesome. And Bobby, before we move to you, let's just properly say thank you to Jamil for stepping in today. Is there anything that you want to leave with the audience before you get out of here?
Yeah, no, one, just again, thanks for having me here. I think it's important to understand, especially as we're talking about, marginalized groups like Black boys, understanding like being around like a particular sort of cultural group, like is a protective factor. Sometimes it's hard for us to think about it that way because we've had some past pains that are associated with our cultural group, our social identities. And so it's hard for us to see the positive in the pain. But really, it's a protective factor. There's a lot of research that shows that it's a protective factor to be around your own folks. Like if you have Afrocentric schools or programming, it actually helps with the racial development, your positive psychology about yourself, especially as you go out into this world and you have these ill experiences where you feel othered. Right. Oftentimes it happens in college settings, predominantly white settings. You begin to feel decentered. Like I know how to talk, right? I know how to, like, I'm really good. But when I go into this space, I don't know what happens, but my body just feels like it's been I just can't function the same. Right. And so I think there's a few other programs that are really out here that are positive out here that don't often get a lot of light. Brown body ice skating is extremely positive. So free ice skating for young people and grown folks, folks of color. Right. So your instructors, many of them are Black and brown, and the young people there too. And to go onto the ice, something that's been historically like not for Black folks, like not been an opportunity. It's liberating to go into this space where you've been conditioned to think that's not for me. And then having like the positivity around that. Sankofa Swim is another resource that I think is really important. When we talk about historical harm, like the depth of the harm, right? The issues being in our tissues of what slavery, transatlantic slavery coming across the ocean. And like, you're talking about folks coming from countries that should be like dolphins, like swimming in the water. But a lot of us have this severed relationship with water because of that historical harm. And so you have a lot of young babies dying because they don't know how to swim. And there's this inherent like fear in our bodies when it comes to water for any of us. And so powerful program, and to be around other people that understand that and help to make sure your babies are good as with swimming. 612 Jungle yoga studio owned by a Black woman, Gabby. And so there's all these spaces, and it's like, how do we really just one, make sure that we're present in these spaces so you can feel safe, and then two, how do we network so we're all linking up together, because everyone's kind of out here doing their own thing in many cases, and there's a lot of powerful support in operating as one. And so those are three resources I think that are also very valuable when we talk about pro-social activities for our young Black boys, our young kids in general.
Say the name of the first one more time that you mentioned.
Yes, brown body ice skating.
Brown, just body or bodied?
Body
Okay.
with a Y. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're definitely gonna add those to the list of resources that we're compiling here.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been a pleasure. See you when I see you.
All right. See you later. All right. Now it's down to just the three of us, which is pretty awesome. Bobby, let's talk about your book first. I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but I want you to just talk about your book a little bit. And then we're going to talk about Black Men Teach, which is an organization that's training Black men to be educators?
Okay, so a little about my book. I started writing my book, I believe, when I was 16. That's when I started like just overall writing poetry and like the collection of poems. And when I turned 17 is when I kind of had the idea, what can I do? What can I put this in? How can I like make this into something? That was the ideal. Like, okay, I can make this into a book. And then like I really started like throughout the year, I started promoting it and like finding different ways to like get it out there. But the whole idea of the book, it's a poetry book based on like my own mental health journeys, but also mental health journeys of other people that I know and talk to, of like being, especially being a young Black man uh, in America, because there's a lot with coming with that. There's a lot of things we got to face. There's a lot of things, a lot of barriers, a lot of mental barriers that you got to overcome to be able to find strength within yourself. So
Yeah.
that's really about my book. It's something that I did to be able to help people and to help myself, to show people that, hey, you don't necessarily got to go out here and gang bang. You don't got to go out of here and do drugs and do all these things. That there's positive things and there's ways you could be better, be a better person. So that's what my goal is with the book.
I love
And
it. Share with the audience again, kind of your inspiration. I know you've kind of said it, but there had to be something. Was there one thing that really inspired you to do this? Because not everyone wakes up and says, "Oh, I think I'm gonna write a book of poetry today and get that published." Like, tell me how you even got to that point.
so for one, I love reading. I get my hobby of reading from my mother. She loves reading. I love reading. And there's this one author. His name is Jason Reynolds, and he had this book called The Long Way Down. And that first, a little about that book. First book I ever read fully through. When I was younger, I used to hate reading. I used to hate reading like kind of when I was younger. Never read a book fully through, but I think I was in like seventh grade. I read that book fully through, page to cover, like 3 times. I think I loved it, and like the format of it, it was like a poetry. It's kind of like a poetry storytelling book, and I was just like, man, like I just like and after I read that book, I started reading more and more of his books, and he does a lot with poetry, like a lot with poetry, and that just really interested me. Another like Black man interested in poetry, and then I got the idea like, man, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could turn this into a book, turn this into something that I can call mine, and maybe even sell to other people. Like my idea wasn't even like, okay, I'm gonna sell this book and stuff. This is just gonna be something I have out there. If people buy it, then people buy it. But it was just really something that I wanted to do to like, just to feel accomplished also. So yeah.
That it's an amazing accomplishment for a young person. Leo, I know when we were offline before we got started, you were so excited that you got your copy in the mail.
Yeah. As soon as we talked about it last week, I was like, oh yeah. I went to Amazon, found it, and all y'all need to go do it. Mine came this week. I've been able to check out a few of the poems. Amazing. And I want to say this in front of everybody, to you, Bobby, like, thank you for sharing this with us. Like, this is your hard work, something from the heart. And it takes a lot, not just the creativity, but the courage and just the belief in yourself to put something out there like that. It's beautiful. I'm not all the way through it, but I love it so far. And I wanted to say, for me to you, thank you. I really appreciate just you putting that into the world.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Like, yeah, even saying what he said. So there's one thing about the book that I don't really say to most people for like months and months after. Like, I couldn't read my own book. Like, till to this day, like I don't really necessarily have my own copy, just because it's like I know it's it kind of it's a story in a book of overcoming of my own personal journey. Like, being when you open like that own thing, you have to look back at these past poems that remind you of the things that you went through to be able to
Yeah.
overcome. It's kind of like, man, like you look to like, now I'm here, but I was still there. So it's kind of like, it's something that it took so much courage, like so much courage to be able to put out there. And it was just like, it's still something I still battle with to this day, to be able to pick it up myself and just read a poem out of there, just because it's like I get instant reminders. But sometimes a reminder can be good because to help, level you down, but sometimes it can also be bad if it, tends to take over in a wrong or a negative way.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that. As you get older, one of the challenges is, okay, we have these feelings and emotions, but how long do we sit in them? And there is pressure to say, oh my gosh, you have to get over it. Why are you lingering in this? Why are you wallowing and sitting in this trauma, or, reliving this memory over and over again? But I'm learning as I get older that take the time that you need. There should not be any pressure for you to say, I'm only going to take 2 days to get over this, and then I just have to wash my hands of it. I think that you need to take the time that you need. And writing this book of poetry must have been so cathartic for you. And I hope that as young people are watching this, they, go get this book, because I think the poems that you wrote are so relatable in so many ways. Even though it's your life, it's your journey, there are so many of the poems that I could relate to personally. And like I said last time, the way that you kind of created it gives people the opportunity. There's some empty spaces on each page where you can really just jot down your own thoughts about, the feeling that you had, how you connected with this particular story. So listen, the book is amazing. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that. So thank you again. I want to thank you, like Leo did, for putting this out there for us. All right, let's talk about Black Men Teach real quick, Bobby, because this is a organization that you shared at our last talk, and I had never heard of them before. So tell us a little bit about Black Men Teach, what you know, and how you are involved with them, because I know that you have some involvement with them as well.
Got you. So Black Men Teach is, so from what I learned, I'm newly in it. So they have two separate things. They're really an organization focused on being able to grow the space of Black educators, of Black male educators in Minnesota. Because when you look at the percentages, as it says right there's only a 0.5 percentages of all teachers that are African American males in Minnesota. And I feel like that percentage, that lack of representation is a very, very big thing that we don't talk about, because, representation is everything in the young Black man's life, especially for our, generations, because we tend to grow up without fathers and lack of fathers and male figures. So having that representation when you go to school or something, and you think, okay, you're not going to see anybody like you, but then you see somebody exactly like you, you can kind of see yourself in that future. You can see yourself being that in the future. You can see yourself in another way other than seeing yourself as an athlete or a rapper, a thug, a criminal. You can see yourself in a more positive way. And they really focus on helping young Black men, especially they have a college cohort. That's what I'm in, being able to cultivate us to be able to be the right leaders and hold us to a standard that for generations to come, Black men really tended to hold each other to higher standards, to be able to achieve higher, to be able to do higher, to be able to be on top of your stuff and handle your business. It's definitely a positive, a really good positive organization, and I love it. When I first heard about it, I was so excited, and when I first heard about it, I didn't even have thoughts of being a teacher. I didn't really thinking about it, nothing. That wasn't my thought, but just as I got older and realized it furthermore came to be my purpose, serving people in some type of way. And it's just overall, it's a beautiful organization. It's the things that be able to look in a room of successful older Black men that's doing things that potentially I want to do in my future. It puts something in my spirit, sometimes it makes me bring tears of joy to my eyes, because I didn't really see that growing up, and being able to see that room of successful Black men who look like me, same story, same background, all that, it really helps you feel connected and makes you really think about, okay, what can I do more to better my future and better myself? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, as I was going through the website, I just, I've learned that I get goosebumps when I have the good feels. I'm learning that about myself, and nothing but goosebumps as I'm going through their website. So I'm really looking forward to learning a lot more about this organization. Leo, had you heard of Black Men Teach before Bobby had mentioned it?
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button.
Okay.
I had one of our family friends actually is a part of it. And so, but that honestly is the extent to my knowledge. Like, I talked to him about it a little bit, and I'm kind of feeling convicted, honestly, as we're sitting here talking about Black Men Teach, and I'm an adjunct professor at the U, and so it's like I need to tap in and make sure that I'm, just involved a little bit. So I would say I knew about it, but I did just get a message from somebody. Might have been God, might have just been internally, but I need to tap in. So
Absolutely. I am looking forward to meeting with them and talking a little bit more about them. So thank you for sharing that resource with us, Bobby.
For sure.
Let's talk a little bit. There are some names that you mentioned, Leo, while you were speaking. So let's start with Northside Child Development Center, and then let's talk about Wilder after that. So let's talk about those two resources. Are you still on mute?
I did it again. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention everybody. I feel kind of like I get to a point where I'm like, I gotta shout everybody out. But as a whole, we've been blessed and fortunate enough to partner with 9 different provider organizations. And then also we have a leadership cohort as well. And so on the 80x3 website, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see just a list of everybody that has been a part of what we've been doing.
Yes.
And Baby Space, Family Wise, Embracing Equity, First Children's Finance, Hallie Q. Brown, the Hmong Early Childhood Coalition, Mary T. Welcome, Wilder, Northside Childhood Development Center, People Serving People, Propel, Centro, Tyrone Guzman, the Family Partnership, Baby Space, all these Wilder, all of these organizations have been a blessing for me to be a part of and be able to walk with in this work. And I think what's so special about these organizations is that they are not just dedicated to helping the babies. And, that's a lot of what my work is.
Yes.
But these organizations are dedicated to helping the entire family and helping them in the way that they need. And so that's something that I really have been able to just see, be aware of. And it's just, again, everything is a get to in this just space, because these organizations, what they're doing, and these are things that I learned in my previous role, the previous field that I was in, like the juvenile justice side of things. One of the things that always came up was you would get these young people to a space where they're working, they're just really productive, they're in coding, they're doing all these extracurricular activities, finally being able to be young men, young women, young people, and just sort of start to develop. And then something will happen where, a loss may occur, or things at home, somebody's kind of struggling, and there's always that battle. And it's not, and I think there's this outlook that a lot of our young people want to stay in that space of just negativity and this, that, and the third. But what really is going on is that there's an internal battle. Like, they want to do well, they want to provide for themselves, but then there's a space of guilt. How can I do all this for myself when people back home are struggling? How can I have this level of success when my younger sister, my younger brother may not be eating that night? And so we always would try to find ways to support the entire family as well. If it's connecting them to food shelves, if it's, different things that we got going on, making sure that they're invited, just continuing to encourage that family partnership and that bond. And the thing that would always happen is you get to a space where you're like, yeah, but this is after the fact. This is after they have systems involved. What these organizations are doing, they're doing that from RIP. They're doing that from the beginning. They're providing all of these resources that are poured in after the fact, in the beginning. Organizations like Wilder, they have created one of the coolest things that I've seen. And they know how I am. I get to talking about their parent resource room, and it is just a blessing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And essentially what they did was they used some of the funding from the partnership with 80x3 to build the family resource room, to get them to a space where the parents could have their own space And one of the things that always comes up is that you may have a meeting with your child and a therapist, and you may not feel comfortable with them being in your home. You may have a interview that you need to prep for, and you may not have the space at home to do that quietly. You may need to print something off, and then you have to stop. Oh my gosh, how much do I got to pay for printing this off? Then I got to ask somebody to use their stuff. And what they did was completely remove that need. And it really is a need, and completely remove that and put it all in one area. Also giving giving the parents an opportunity to decompress before they pick up their young people. I joke all the time, but there's a few times where I probably would have gotten a lot less trouble if my mom had a parent resource room to just sort of woosah before she had to come pick me up. And so this is like another example of that. Like this organization, all of the organizations, and they're strategically placed in our community's neighborhoods, so that, and they own that. They say that we want our families to be able to get to us. We want them to be able to know that this is in my backyard. I don't have to go 10 miles out there to get support that my child and my family needs. And so I can't sing their praises enough, because oftentimes they are, and I said this before, doing this heavy lift alone without necessarily having that support growing up. And that's not everybody, but that's a lot of us. A lot of us get into this work because something that we may not have had, and we want to give that to the next generation. So all of these and I've learned so much. I've learned so much from these organizations, and the things that we're going through on a daily basis, the adverse experiences that we face in the community, that doesn't just stop because they're childhood development centers. Like they are still going through the same things. And so they're battling that. They're battling things that's going on in the community. And then also being that pillar of the community to keep that love going, keep that support going. I've been to carnivals where people have brought out the mini donuts, the petting zoos. The one organization, Baby Space, had a little train go around the entire facility, the entire building, and the kids could sit in it, and they just rode around. And I'm like, this is crazy. And there was a sneaker ball prom that I went to where everybody suited and got their sneakers on. And Bobby mentioned this earlier. Representation is so important. Representation is everything. And so another thing that these organizations are doing, breaking that stigma that you get what you get and you don't have a fit when it comes to early childhood work, when it comes to support. I think a lot of people feel like when you're in an area that maybe doesn't have the resources some other places have, you're just supposed to accept any old thing. And these organizations are like, nah, that's not what we're about. We're going to give you the best. We're going to make sure that you have the best at all times, and that you're not sitting there wondering, what if my child had this? What if my child, because that's the question that it always boils down to. And that's, I used to ask myself all the time, what if these 17, 18, 19-year-olds had this support from 0 to 3 in those just really critical developmental years? What if they had that? And right in real time, I'm seeing them work on the social emotional learning that they need. They're helping them develop healthy relationships. They're helping them become people. And we talked about this last time. A lot of times, some of those mental models that we're trying to get away from, a lot of people say things like, oh, it's just daycare, or why do our babies need mental health support? They don't even know what's going on. And that couldn't be further from, the truth. Right. And that's what organizations are really disrupting, and they've been disrupting it, some of them for over 100 years. So again, it's been a pleasure and a blessing for me to just sort of like ride the coattails. Let me just get in the space and ask you what you need, but then also learn from you and gain some of that expertise, so that when I'm doing community work, I'm also bringing that with me. And so it's been a blessing. I can go on and on and on talking about the great things that they're doing.
Yes.
All in their own way.
And it's important that we, one of the things that when we spoke, to let people know that we're out here, there's support all over the place. And one of the conversations that we had, and Bobby, I want to ask you this question because you are, our resident young person on this panel. Are you aware of all of these resources that are out here for you? And, how does your peer group tap into these resources, and do they?
I mean, when I was younger, I definitely had some of these resources because when I was younger, I lived on the Rondo side, and you definitely do see those resources more presence on that side. But when I moved to the east side, I'm gonna be honest, all that really vanished. All that kind of went away. You didn't really see all these community gather, all these community things. Like, yeah, we had rec centers and stuff like that, but you never really heard about these community organizations or these community organizers. And just because, as people do say, like, I feel like a lot of community things or community bases, they are spaced out in certain areas, and it's kind of hard to have that complete outreach when they're not evenly dispersed, or they're really on more so one side of town, because you kind of got to look at both sides of town. You have kids who grew up on that Rondo side, you have kids who grew up on the east side, and when kids on the east side don't have the same community things to be able to do that same like feeling of being able to, you can go to all these different organizations. It kind of does change the way that you grow up, and definitely change the way that you look at things. But yeah, I'll really say that's kind of what I would have to say about that. Like, you didn't really see it on the east side as much. You didn't really have these much things as like, yeah, like as I got older and I started hearing about like all these different organizations, like, I always knew about the Wilder Foundation because they do have a Wilder Rec Center on the East Side Foundation. Actually, what's crazy, I think I received an award, yeah, from the Wilder Foundation or from the Kofi Foundation this summer. I received award from there, and like, even like, I didn't know about like how big they were in the Black community and stuff like that, just because like I'm on a different side of town. You don't necessarily get to go outside and you'll see all these big things like, promoting themselves, or you didn't really see that. You kind of got a different, I don't want to say necessarily complete different image, but you definitely got a different image of representation. You got to, deal with more of the bad representation, I would say. You got to kind of avoid that and try to fight through that, to be honest. But there's definitely still good representation on the east side. It's just much harder to find, I'll say. Like,
That's very interesting. That's interesting because, Leo, when we were having the conversation, you were talking about the resources that were available when you were younger and growing up. And do people even recognize the resources that are available to them, and the change and the difference that can make? How do you get out there and engage with the community? Because we could have daycare providers. I'm sure that's a target, a place where you are interested in making sure that our daycare providers are doing the right things for our children. So how do you get out there, Leo, and share the work that you're doing with other organizations, and with, in fields that really need the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. And I think the title that you've kind of created for this podcast, like, we're out here, like, that's what I try to pride myself on. Like, I try to get into the community, and this is something that I've really had to work at as well. It's my networking. I think growing up, you get to a space sometimes where you're not necessarily privy, and you don't learn how to necessarily network. And not only do you not learn how to do it, but it becomes something that's like, you should not just be talking to just random people. Like, you can't just willy-nilly go up to somebody asking them for help, because of all these things that could come with that. You could be taken advantage of, you could be looked at as a victim, and just like, really, you're taught to kind of go into this little cocoon and like kind of harden yourself off, not smile at people while you're walking down the street. So I think part of it is me unlearning a lot of what I learned in terms of networking, in terms of communicating with our own people. So that's part of it, is making sure that I'm checking some of my own learned just feelings and beliefs around it, but then following up with actually doing it. I was fortunate enough to partner with Hennepin County and Minneapolis Public Schools and put on like a wellness festival one day, and then bringing in organizations that I know are doing stuff in the community, like Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Hoops. Making sure that I know that there's a person, Tommy, who's doing really good work in terms of gun violence in Minneapolis, really all over Minnesota now, and trying to make sure that he's a part of things. And then when he's a part of it, making sure that I'm showing up to his ribbon cutting ceremony, and then making sure that I'm showing up to the ribbon cutting ceremony for the family resource room at Wilder, making sure that I'm at the carnivals and the Christmas shows that organizations are putting on, but then also asking the people that I'm partnering with, who else do I need to be in partnership with? Because you don't know what you don't know. And then I just living where I live, I think is part of it too. I live in North Minneapolis, and I grew up for a good majority of my life in South Minneapolis, going back to the places that I know, that I'm familiar with, the people who are still in existence. But then again, like I said, doubling back and talking to all these organizations. Part of my job is to really sit down and say, who else should we be in contact with? You all are the experts. You all are doing this amazing work. Who am I missing? Who's not in my network that should be? And then seeking them out, going out and just kind of talking about what we're doing, what our goals are. And one thing I've learned about the early childhood field is that everybody, for the most part, is just focused on doing what's best for our babies. There may be a lot of siloed work, and that, for me, that's not a thing where it's like, oh, that's a problem. That creates opportunity for me to help build community. And so I look at siloed work, just people that are working in isolation, is why can't we come together? And so I think part of it is asking the question of who do I need to be in community with, but then figuring out ways to create that action of bringing people together. So we as an organization, we host lunch and learns. I'm actually, after this, going to a lunch and learn with First Children's Finance and working on some of the just things taking place in the early childhood field right now, but providing spaces and opportunities to get together so that these organizations can come together as well. That's another part. Part of the work with the 80x3 initiative is creating spaces like our community of practices. So monthly, we would have touch points with all of our organizations and bring them together to actually share, bounce ideas off of each other, and also just have a shoulder to lean on. Because me saying, oh, it's tough out here is one thing, but when you hear somebody who's doing the exact same work as you day in and day out, doing that heavy lift by themselves again, and they're saying how tough it is, it sounds a lot different than me. So kind of to put a bow on the answer to the question, I really pride myself on being in the community, physically being in those spaces when I'm invited, and then figuring out ways to make sure that these organizations are present in areas where they may not be. So if they can't come, I'm speaking up for them. I'm using my voice to elevate them, to make sure I'm hyping them up. And then also doubling back and saying, okay, now that I have all these people, now that I have all these names, how can we come together and push this work forward? How can we, because we are time bound, 80x3 will not be here forever. And so how can we get to a space that when we're not here, this work is continuing to move on? And that is really pointing to the fact that systems are made up of people and relationships. And so I really am trying to work on building those relationships, making them long lasting, but then connecting people to each other so that when United Way's not there, it doesn't just fall apart. It's just continuing to go on. And that's the goal with every job. I feel like when it comes to human service, you want to work yourself out of a job. Like that's the goal eventually. You want to do the job so well that it's no longer a need. And so that's sort of my thinking. That's how I go and attack it every day, is just, one, how can I let these organizations know that I support them, I love them, and what they're doing is transformative. But then two, how can we grow what they're doing, grow the word, make sure that everybody knows about it, but then also making sure it's not just on these centers, making sure our community has that ability to heal. And so one of the beautiful things that we're seeing now is that organizations are not just keeping it in-house. It's like, okay, how can we share these resources with our families? And now the families are at home talking about trauma-informed care, and they're passing this stuff off, and they're doing some of those things. And they're saying things like, a lot of the stuff that I'm working through now, I had no idea that I went through myself. And so just that learning and unlearning, I think is huge. I know that's a long, drawn-out answer to your question, but a lot of it goes into it. There's a lot that goes into it, and that's a big part of my job. We call it the peopling. But I just love being in community. I love building community. I love meeting with people and just trying to see how the work intersects.
Yeah. There was a young man at Propel. He gave did a presentation at a leadership conference that I went to, and he said, all work is people work. And it was really just that simple. All work is people work. Bobby, as you are starting a new chapter in your life, headed off to Augsburg College this fall. Are you staying on campus or are you going to stay home? Did I ask that question? Okay, awesome. Yes. So as you think about your future in this field, as an educator, a future educator, as a Black man who's teaching our Black boys and our Black girls for that matter, what ways, especially after you've kind of listened to all of, Leo and Mr. Simmons and Lambers and, all of these men who've been in their work for so many years, what are the ideas that you are going to carry with you as you are entering into this new journey of your life? How have you been thinking about how you're going to make an impact, and have you?
There's really two things that I try to do. One thing is I believe that everybody is an educator. Everybody that does something to help people, you're educating our future generations. You're educating yourself. You're educating the people around you. You're educating your peers. So I feel like you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be a principal to be an educator. Like if you're in the community and you're helping people to be able to progress and do better and learn more about themselves, you're an educator that yourself. And one thing that I do is always like I keep different paths open. Just because I have an idea of one path, I don't shut the door on the other ones. I always keep things open, especially hearing Leo and Mr. Simmons and Lambers, like the things that they do, it definitely gave me more ideas to, okay, I want to be an educator, but I also want to do these other things. So it definitely, it opened my eyes, and it definitely opened my doors to things that really like are pulling me towards like a future, more of a destination, to more of a certain destination. Because, I'm still young at the end of the day. There's a lot of things that could happen. There's a lot of things that, that may change, that may stay the same. So I just try to keep options open. I try to think like go into things with the idea of that no matter what, no matter where I have to go, I'm gonna have to learn it some way. I'm gonna have to educate myself. I'm gonna have to like help other people. So no matter what, I just try to first I want my future to be about helping people. If I'm not serving people, if I'm not trying to help people get better, I don't think that's my future to live personally as a young man. And I try to I make different connections, like with Mr. Leo, trying to plan to meet up with him, hear more about him and the stuff that he does and us. I'm just trying to find my way and trying to find the best way there, the best route to get where I want to be, and get to be able to who I want to be, and surround myself with the right people that's gonna better help push me forward, that's more like-minded, so I could, help people grow, help people change, help generations, help my peers, even and stuff like that, just be able to better themselves. So yeah, I'll say that's kind of how I do it.
That's awesome. I am looking forward to watching you, Bobby, grow. I plan to keep very close touch with you as you move about the cabin. And I'm excited that you've been able to connect with some powerful Black male leaders that we have in the community. I think that we need to look more in our community for our leaders and less externally, expecting to get some relief or some help from, entertainers or athletes. I think that we need to shift that lens a little bit and start looking more internally in our communities, because we have amazing leaders that are out here doing amazing work. And being able to connect people is really what I like to do, engaging with the community. So Leo, anything that you're doing, make sure that if it's something that I can attend, that you're reaching out to me and letting me know, put it on my calendar and I'll be there. I want to make sure that we remain connected as well. And same with you, Bobby. You have my number. And I'm hoping that you're still thinking about your own podcast series, because I think we're missing the voices from our young people. There's a disconnect. That bridge between generations, I think, is crumbling a little bit. Right, Leo? I think that that's crumbling a little bit. And so to figure out a way to repair those bridges between our generations, I think is very important.
Yeah. I'm definitely just trying to I definitely want to do it, but I just gotta find time because, like, once at college, I didn't realize it was gonna be this. Like, I just I gotta learn better more how to stack like things on top of my plate and just be able to like sort things in a better way, more efficient, so I have time to. But I definitely plan on. There's so many different things that I want to do. Like so many, I'm trying to still like writing another book and stuff like that. And it's just a lot of it. It's fun, It's kind of I'm not kind of scared, but it's like fun. Like I got so much, but that's good. So I have so much different routes I can go. I have so much different things that I can do. I'm not just planting myself in one spot and I can't grow no other place. No, I'm planting myself in different spots, trying to leave an impact, trying to leave like a seed everywhere that I go. That way a part of me grows there, So I'm excited. I definitely can't wait to see what the future holds out. Like I don't know, I'm definitely excited, and I definitely plan on like still staying in touch and being able to, as I get older, attending all these like things, all these different events that you guys do. I definitely plan on and just furthermore connecting. Hopefully, even if you guys do like internships and stuff or whatever, like I'll be, I just love doing stuff like that just because that's the nature of my character. So yeah.
All right, now you didn't put it out there. Don't. So when we call on you, that's so exciting. That's so exciting. You are listening to Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health podcast. We're leading with knowledge, compassion, and support. Please take a moment to follow our channel, subscribe, turn on notifications for future episodes. We'll be doing this every week. Every week, I have so many wonderful conversations planned. So thank you. I appreciate you two so very much for taking this long journey with me. What a month July has been, and it's over. I can't believe it's over.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
All right. Well, thank you. I want to just give you an opportunity because we've had many conversations over the week. So give us a parting word, both of you. Let's start with you, Bobby. What is it that you hope that people were able to gain from listening to us? And then what is the last thing that you want to share with the audience as we wrap this up?
One last thing I'll say is, like, if I had to say one thing and just leave it at that, is take care of yourself. Take care of your mental health. Take time to yourself. Take time to rest. Like, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to break down, no matter who you are, no matter if you're black, white, man, woman, no matter what. It's okay to take time to be like, I'm not okay. You don't have to necessarily feel like, oh no, I gotta keep going, especially parents out there too. You don't necessarily have to say, oh, I gotta keep going, I gotta keep going. It's okay to be weak at times. It's okay to find strength in other people, and that sometimes we can't find strength in ourselves. Sometimes we gotta be able to go out there to be able to talk about our problems, to be able to be emotionally aware with ourselves, and like just be yourself at the same time. Don't lie about yourself. Don't fake it until you make it, but be natural to who you are, and don't try to follow a path that's not meant for you. You feel me? Like, be true to yourself and be true to who you are, and forever hold on to that, because at the end of the day, that's all we got is ourselves, and God. To me, that's what I believe. So yeah.
Thank you for those wise words. I appreciate that. Leo?
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I want to say again, Tawana, thank you. It's been a blessing to just be around this many just Black men and just being able to have these conversations and just talk about just things that oftentimes don't necessarily get enough light. If I was going to leave everybody with one thing, I would say go to your closest early childhood development organization and give them a hug. Thank them. Bring them some flowers or something like that. But in all seriousness, like, let's really start placing an importance on the work that these organizations are doing. And let's stop looking at it as just daycare and looking at it as what it is. And that's the transformative, healing, developmental work that really puts our children and our babies and our families in a space to just be productive people and thrive as opposed to survive. They have the early childhood just field itself, and specifically the organizations that are doing this work. They have such a huge impact on not just the people that they work with, but our society as a whole. And I think that we really need to, we're missing the mark on placing an importance on that. And that needs to be something that everybody is yelling and screaming about, because it's that important.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Again, I feel like I've said thank you so much, but I am so appreciative for you and you taking the time to contribute to this podcast. I respect both of you so much and am looking forward to working with you in the future. So thank you again.
Thank you. I'll talk to y'all soon.
Yes. Bobby, tell your mom I said hi.
I got you. I will.
All right. Thank you. And thank you all for everyone that has taken the time out, whether you are with us live, whether you are going to our YouTube channel afterwards and listening. We appreciate your support. Wow, like the whole series has been really amazing. But a few things that I'm taking from this particular episode is that there is positivity in the pain. I loved when Jamil said that, and that just stood out to me. You know, regardless of the historical trauma, generational trauma, even the personal trauma, community trauma, all that trauma that everyone is dealing with, there is positivity in the pain. And like Bobby said, everyone is an educator. If you have a child in your life, work to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need to support their development. Take care of yourself. It's okay to not be okay. And it's all right to just take a beat and feel the feelings that you need to feel and work through them the way that you will be able to grow from it. Find strength in other people when you can't find it within yourself. I loved when Bobby said that as well. And also, as we are parenting or grandparenting, or we have nieces and nephews in our lives that we love and support, remember that it's not just daycare. It's not just daycare. It's really important that we be a little bit more intentional about the places that we take our children, because the daycares are there to support your child's development, and they should be equipped to do that. So many things, so many wonderful things that we talked about throughout this series, and I really hope that you've enjoyed it. Go back, listen to the other podcasts, learn a little bit more about the wonderful expertise that we had with our panels. I can't say enough how much I enjoyed speaking with all of these Black men that are really leaders in our community. All right, so we will not be back next week. We're going to take a week off, but we'll come back with another podcast series in August, mid-August, and then I have coming in September and moving into October, we'll have the University of Minnesota School of Social Work with us. One of the things that you probably got out of the conversations that we had is there's a definite shortage of people who are providing this kind of work to our communities. And so being able to have that conversation with them is going to be absolutely amazing. We'll be talking about our IEC community, our infant and early childhood community, coming up in October. We're talking about sibling grief coming in October and November. Some very amazing conversations that we're having. So please take a moment, if you could, and just subscribe. Make sure that you are staying in touch with what we're doing here, because we're doing some really good work. Just remember, we are here to share our partners with you. These are partners that Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health has worked with over so many years. I've just getting started. I'm a year into this job, and I'm really still learning and growing this department. But what I wanted to make sure that we do is share our partners with the community, with our audience, so that you know what resources are out there. We're not endorsing any particular place. We're not endorsing any particular organization, but we want to make sure that you know the resources that are out there for you. So again, share with the people. We are MACMA.org, MACMA.org everywhere. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, anywhere that you get your social media news from, we are there. So again, thank you. We're going to wrap it up now. But again, I appreciate you joining, and we'll see you again soon.